I want you to picture a town. Not one that was wiped out by a flood or an earthquake, but one that's been slowly, and I mean slowly, getting eaten from the inside out. For more than 60 years now, a fire has been burning in the coal mines underneath Centralia, Pennsylvania. It's this unseen inferno that turned a busy little town into a modern American ghost story. At one point, a resident painted this sign: "Centralia mine fire is our future." And, they weren't being dramatic. It was just a grim fact of life for them. It just perfectly captures that feeling of utter hopelessness, of living on top of a fire that nobody could figure out how to stop.
So we're going to start with the story of Centralia itself, because honestly, to really get your head around this huge global problem, you first have to see what it did to one small town in Pennsylvania.
What's so wild about this is how long it took to unfold. I mean, it all started with something so simple, a routine landfill fire in 1962 that just got out of hand. For almost 20 years, it was just kind of a local quirk, a nuisance. But by the 80s, things got serious. Toxic gas started seeping into people's basements. The ground was literally hot to the touch. And then came the moment that terrified everyone. In 1981, a sinkhole full of steam just opened up in a kid's backyard and nearly swallowed him whole. By 2002, the fight was basically over. When the post office officially got rid of the town's zip code, well, that was pretty much the final nail in the coffin.
And this is where things take a really interesting turn into pop culture. Now, a lot of people think the original Silent Hill video games were based on Centralia, but the game's creators have said that's just a spooky coincidence. The real connection, the direct one, came in 2006 with the Silent Hill movie. The screenwriter for that film explicitly used the story of Centralia, the endless smoke, the cracked roads, the abandoned town, as the direct blueprint for that movie's creepy, desolate world.
Okay, so this brings up a huge question, right? Why was this fire so impossible to put out? I mean, why couldn't they just, dump a ton of water on it and call it a day? Well, let's get into the science of it because it's fascinating.
All right, so anytime you want to put out a fire, you have to break what's called the fire triangle. It's pretty simple. Every fire on Earth needs 3 things to burn: heat, fuel, and oxygen. If you can take away just one of those 3 things, the fire goes out. The massive problem with a coal mine fire is that it has a perfect, almost unlimited supply of all 3. So you have to remember, this is not like a campfire or a house fire. This is a 3-dimensional problem deep inside the Earth. The rock all around the coal acts like a giant oven, holding on to an incredible amount of heat. The fuel, well, that's the coal seam itself, which can go on for miles. And the oxygen? This is the craziest part. The fire literally breathes. It sucks in fresh air through thousands of tiny invisible cracks in the ground and creates its own chimney system. So even if you manage to choke it of oxygen for a little while, all that heat stored in the rocks will just cause it to reignite the second it gets a gulp of fresh air.
So with all that working against you, you can see why trying to fight one of these things is basically a mission impossible scenario. But that didn't stop them from trying. Let's take a look at the different methods people have used and, maybe more importantly, how often they actually work.
So when you look at the data, it's pretty grim. The one method that works best is excavation, which is literally just digging the entire fire out of the ground. That works about 73% of the time, but it costs a fortune, and you can only do it if the fire is close to the surface. Everything else is way more of a gamble. You can try flooding it with water, but the water just drains away through cracks in the rock. You can try to seal the surface to cut off the oxygen, but those seals crack over time, and building barriers underground, the fire just laughs and finds a way to burn right around them.
Now, let that number sink in for a second. If you take the most expensive, most destructive option, digging it out, off the table, your chance of success with any other common method plummets to just 39%. You literally have a better chance of winning a coin toss. This number right here, this explains why Centralia's fire is still burning. The odds were just stacked against them from the very beginning.
Okay, let's go back to Centralia for a minute, because we need to talk about one of the fire's other consequences. The invisible stuff. The toxic legacy it was pumping into the air. So back in 2006, scientists set up all of these monitoring stations you see here. They wanted to measure the hidden dangers that were venting out of the ground from the fire, and they were looking for one thing in particular: mercury, a really nasty neurotoxin that's known to be released when you burn coal. And yup, they found it. After a year of testing, They determined that the average concentration of mercury vapor in the air was 1.6 nanograms per cubic meter. So it was confirmed. The fire was definitely releasing mercury pollution into the atmosphere.
But, and this is a really important but, we need some perspective on that number. While the mercury was there, the levels they measured were way, way below what the EPA considers a health risk for breathing it in, which is 300 nanograms per cubic meter. So the study's conclusion was basically, yes, the fire is a source of mercury, but thankfully, the levels in the air don't seem to pose a significant health threat.
The whole story of Centralia is just, it's tragic, it's bizarre, it's fascinating. But maybe the biggest lesson it has to teach us is that it's not unique, not by a long shot. Let's zoom out and see just how big this problem really is. To give you a sense of the timescale we're dealing with, experts estimate that there's enough coal under Centralia for its fire to keep burning for at least another 250 years. 250 more years from now. Just think about that. And this is happening all over the place. Centralia's home state of Pennsylvania has at least 38 active fires right now. Across the entire United States, we're talking hundreds. And when you zoom out to the whole planet, the number is staggering. Thousands. Thousands of these coal fires are burning completely out of control right now as we speak. And that leaves us with a pretty tough final thought. What Centralia really shows us is that some of the messes we make, well, they can't be cleaned up. They just become a permanent part of the landscape. So the real question isn't just about how we fight these fires, but maybe how do we learn to live with these deep wounds in the earth that might very well outlast all of us?